Okay, we're going to pick right back up where we were, and we're going to talk about organic substances and carbohydrates. I'm on page 39 by now, which we're very nearly finished with chapter 2. I hope to finish this by this one. We're just talking about some of the important things that are parts of the cell. Let's talk about carbohydrates and what they do. You know what carbohydrates do if you play any kind of sports at all. They're your energy givers. They provide our energy to our cells. They also provide building blocks. They give you the materials that we have to build our cell walls and our cell structures. It's very important because they're one of the few organic things that are water soluble. A lot of organic substances are not water soluble, but carbohydrates are. What a lot of people may not know is that carbohydrates, when we eat those carbs, our body changes them into sugar, and that's where your energy comes from. So when you think you're doing well, eating lots and lots of carbs, your body's going to turn those carbs into sugar. All right. They do contain carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Please understand the difference between what a monosaccharide, things like glucose, fructose, these are simple sugars. And if you're going to eat sugars, those are the kinds you want. Then you have disaccharides. Sucrose is the kind of sugar that you're going to get on table sugar. And then polysaccharides, cellulose, that cellulose is what's going to build your cell walls. Okay, and glycogen is another one. All right, there you go. Here's your glucose molecules. This glucose is table sugar. That's what it is. Some of these glucose molecules, they have straight chains, and then sometimes they form these rings. And you see that shape there on the far right. That's the symbol. That's what we would use in organic chem to symbolize a glucose molecule, so that we don't have to draw all that other mess. You just symbolize it with, that's called a benzene ring right there, like that, and then, or a ring, a cyclic structure, and then the O there to symbolize the oxygen that's incorporated inside the ring. Because you see all the rest here are here are all your carbons here that are part of the ring structure, and then you have this extra O, so that's why you have to show it. Alright, there's your monosaccharide, and if you see the disaccharide, there's two of them. That's what the di stands for. And poly means you got a bunch of them strung together. A bunch of them strung together. Okay. Your lipids, these are going to be your fatty things, and your triglycerides. These are are not going to be soluble in water. Think about that. If you know that oil and other fats like butter and things like that, they're not going to be soluble in water. Those are lipids. That we're going to get our energy from them. Look at that chemical formula. C57H110O6. Alright. But what I want you to know from them, triglycerides, I mean, it's got tri, 3. Okay? Alright, and you need to know that they are used, again, for our energy. That's what we're going to get our energy from. So they're not bad things. We can't survive without them. But triglycerides, if you get too much of them in your blood, that, as some of you may know, people that have diabetes, type 2 diabetes, these people have to really watch their triglyceride level, because if they have too much triglyceride in their blood, that's a big marker for type 2 diabetes. This is a big problem, especially in the younger population in America, because we eat so many carbs and so many foods that are so high in fat content. We eat too much fast food and foods that are way high in saturated fats. Okay. Saturated fats are going to contain, saturated means just what it says, it's saturated, got lots of fat in them, and it's going to contain at least 3 saturated fatty acids, and they're going to be solids, not liquids. Think of oil as a liquid. Most of those are unsaturated. And then think of solid fats like butter or old-fashioned lard or animal fat, or like Crisco shortening. Those are solids at room temperature. Okay, those would be saturated. Alrighty, we're good. You understand the difference between those two? So, like vegetable oil is going to be unsaturated. Those are going to be made from mostly plants like corn oil and canola, things like that. Those are going to be unsaturated. If it's going to be a solid like butter, they're going to come from animals. All right. And generally, the liquid form is going to be healthier for our bodies. And then phospholipids. Phospholipids are going to be building blocks of our cells, and they're going to be that's what makes our cell membranes. And remember what your cell membranes do in our bodies. Cell membranes are the go-betweens. They're the ones that say, yes, you can come in, no, you can't come in. So they're important in our body. And it's what the phospholipids are, the primary component, or the major building block of those. All right. I think, let's see, do you need to know this water insoluble? You probably learned that water insoluble. It's got 2 parts. It's got the part that's water soluble, and then the part that's water insoluble. So that's important as well, because it has to be able to get in, and then once it's in there, it has to be able to say, oh wait, just a minute. So that's super important. Okay. And then steroids. Now, steroids, by the way, over here on page 42, steroids, this is one example, but it is like a backbone. Okay, and steroids, we think of them as being bad things, but we need steroids, and a lot of people take steroids. When we think of steroids, or at least me, I think of, oh, they're on steroids because they're trying to be a better athlete or whatever. But a lot of people need to take steroids for genuine medical purposes. There's lots of use of steroids to help treat cancer and other things like that. But nevertheless, steroids are natural. They are naturally occurring for sure. And this right here on the, let me show you, this right here on the right hand side rather, is the basic structure of a steroid. Okay, this one here, we don't think about cholesterol as being a steroid, but it surely is. And look at that big old structure of cholesterol. And there's good cholesterol and bad cholesterol, please keep that in mind. But the overall basic structure of a steroid is the same. It's got these 2 rings. They're connected, okay? 3 hexagon rings, and then it's got a pentagon, like so. All right. And then they're used to make our hormones. Lots of different things that our body uses hormones for. Everything from reproduction to generating hair to lots, just so many things that we need hormones for in our body. They're super important. So we need them. They're vital. And okay, then we have our proteins, and we know that our proteins build our amino acids, and they help build our muscle as well. So they help with our structure again. They give us huge amounts of energy, and they are important as receptors. They are messengers as well. Okay, so proteins are one of the most busy parts of our body that there are. They also work on fighting our battles for us as our antibodies. There are some of your structures for your proteins, and this far right one, there's an amino acid. Alright, so you see those structures, and I'm going to want you to know those as well. Alright, and then here we go. There's four levels of that protein structure, and I really do want you to know those. And those are on page 43 of your book. Okay, there's the primary structure, and it leads on over to page 44 of your book, and there's a really good picture. It takes up the whole page of your book. The primary structure, okay, where each shape represents one amino acid, and then the whole chain is part of that protein molecule. All right, and then you got your secondary structure. Notice that right there looks like a DNA molecule. And you got your polypeptide chain, and remember they're held together with hydrogen bonding. I don't know if you can see that in this. You can see it in your book on page 44 much, much, much better. But right here, you got hydrogen bonds that are showing, and that's holding these two structures together. Okay, and then it coils in on itself again. You can see the little red dots much better in your textbook. They're coiled together and held that way in that structure because of those hydrogen bonds that we talked about a couple of lectures ago. So they're super important. And then you've got a tertiary structure. Again, I know you talked about this quite a bit in biology, but that tertiary structure, they fold in on themselves, and they get these pleats, and they get these dimensionality to them, and that's the tertiary structure. And then the quaternary structure, where you get these peptide chains that connect together, and that's called the quaternary structure. Okay, so the simplest chain is the primary structure, and then when you get those peptide chains that starts to twist in on itself or pleat together, that's the secondary, and it can either be like folded on itself or coiled on itself. And then when it does start folding and pleating and tangling, that's the tertiary. And then when you have two or more of those that join together, that's quaternary. That's what happens, that how protein structures build on themselves. Okay, and then we have nucleic acids. Nucleic acids, they're what forms our genes, and they are the ones that are encoders. So they're super important also. There's no part of our body that's not important, and we're all part of that same body. Everything's important, so we can't do without any parts. But the nucleic acids are your encoders, and they build our nucleotides. So, you know, DNA and RNA, you should have learned those in biology. I really don't want to have to go into too much of those because I'm not a biology person, I'm a chemistry person. And so I would rather talk about just the chemistry of them. Okay, but I hope that you do know DNA, remember it stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. So they are both acids. And then ribonucleic acid. Remember deoxyribonucleic acid is a double. It's a double helix. And then ribonucleic acid is only got a single. Alright? And then on page 46 of your textbook, it shows this. The nucleic acid molecule is made up of one single RNA and then 2 DNA chains. And they're held together again by that all-important hydrogen bonding. The little dots there are showing you the hydrogen bonds that hold them together. All right. And then you can see what you should be able to get out of this. You should be able to give some examples of how the study of living organisms requires an understanding of chemistry. Make sure that you can describe those relationships. I saw your tests. Most of you did pretty well. But let's go right here. 3 types of chemical reactions. I hope that from this PowerPoint and the one before it, you could do that. Synthesis, decomposition, and they called it exchange, but I'd rather you call it replacement. The difference between acids, when they are put in water, they break apart and they're electrolytes that give away a hydrogen ion. Bases, when they are put into water, they can accept a hydrogen ion because they give off hydroxides, and then that hydrogen and hydroxide form of water. And then buffers. What are buffers? Didn't talk too much about that, but buffers are what keeps our blood pH at a very constant, very, very narrow window, 7.35 to 7.45. You go much lower than 7, we can't live very long at all. Okay, lower is called acidosis, lower than 7.3. Higher than 7.45, or 7.5 I guess it is called alkalosis. We cannot live for very long at all if our blood pH gets above 7.8. So remember those things. Make sure that you can list the major groups of the inorganic chemicals that are common in cells and be able to explain their functions. And also describe the general functions and the main classes of organic molecules. Lipids, okay, your DNA, your RNA, carbohydrates, all of them. Make sure that you can tell what those main classes are and be able to describe them. Alrighty, and then we're also going to start on Chapter 3 pretty quick, so by the end of this week I want you to have that done and be working still on your bones. I really want you all to be working on that skeleton, get it out and start practicing learning what they are. Alright, have a good week.